celebration time. It don't matter what part of the jewel they come from. You da you and me da me. But guess what? All are we the one.
The name Rene Villanueva Senior is synonymous with broadcasting in Belize. In 2007, he released his book, Thanks for Choosing Love, which was autobiographical and chronicled the broadcasting industry. On the occasion of his 75th birthday, one of his proteges, Pauline Rodriguez Romero, sat down with him to look at his life and his numerous contributions to broadcasting in Belize. Our first show features his childhood and his entry into the world of broadcasting. The second show will look at the formation of Love FM. We will have the start of that conversation after this break to hear from our partners: Silkgrass Farms, National Bank of Belize, The Barry, Minister Kevin Bernard, and Del Martin.
Share the love.
At Silkgrass Farms, we believe in more than just growing food. We're cultivating a future. Across 9,000 acres in the foothills of the Maya Mountains, our family of farms grows a vibrant array of crops: coconuts, citrus, cacao, watermelons, avocados. But our mission goes beyond harvests. Through sustainable agriculture, we are not just growing crops, we're strengthening ecosystems and reversing the impacts of climate change. Silkgrass Farms is a part of a global movement, transforming modern food systems into living stories of nutrition, nature, and people. From our fields to your table, every product tells a story of health and hope for the future.
Your dream home isn't just a house, it's where your future takes shape. At NBB, we go beyond financing. Our partnership with trusted professionals ensure you're supported at every step. We simplify the process, offering expert advice, personalized services, and fast approvals to make your journey stress-free. With NBB, you're not just buying a house, you're investing in your future with confidence and ease.
Action.
At NBB, we don't just help you finance your dream, we help you live it. National Bank of Belize, your partner every step of the way.
The Barry is your one-stop store of choice. We have an array of electronics and accessories to keep you connected. Your home will be the envy of your friends when you choose from a wide variety of household appliances. We can help you dress the entire family in style and comfort with our selection of clothing and footwear. Visit our store on Albert Street in Belize City, San Pedro, La Isla Bonita, Park Street in Orange Walk Town, Belmopan, and San Ignacio, Santa Elena. Debari, get more, pay less.
Vamos! Vamos bien con Kevin Bernard, Kevin Bernard, Kevin Bernard, Kevin Bernard. Champion, champion, Kevin is the champion, 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 champion. Kevin Bernard is the people's champion, champion, champion. Kevin is the champion, 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 champion. Southeast and West, Kevin is a true champion. 2020, Kevin came with a vision. Executed well, he's a man on a mission. The work continues with new innovation. Plan Belize 2.0 activation. Benefiting the West, North to South and East. Infrastructure and opportunities. Plenty get done, plenty more to come. Kevin Bernard, you can continue depend on. Champion, champion, Kevin is the champion, 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 champion. Kevin Bernard is the people's champion, champion, champion. Kevin is the champion, 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 champion. Southeast and West, Kevin is a true champion. Sports development, woman empowerment, infrastructure, youth involvement. Heart of a champion, full confident. Astonishing leader, no argument. Relentlessly with a passion and drive. Natural born leader, no one gets deprived. Dedicated to serving and provide. Belize in good hands, no one can deny. Champion, 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 champion. Kevin Bernard is the people's champion. Champion, 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 champion. North, south, east and west, Kevin is a true champion. Champion, 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 champion. Hey, one time for the champion. Hey, two time for the champion. Hey, three time for the champion. Hey, everybody shout it out loud now. Champion, champion, Kevin is the champion, 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 champion. Kevin Bernard is the people's champion. Champion, champion, Kevin is the champion, 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 champion. North, south, east and west, Kevin is a true champion.
Celebration time. It don't matter what part of the jewel they come from. You that you and me that me. But guess what? All are we the one. See what I mean?
Today we have a very special episode of Belize Watch, and I am being given the honor of interviewing you, Chief. Amazing.
Pauline, it feels so different being on this side of the microphone where Belize Watch is concerned. Usually I'm the one with the microphone in my hand, but I yield to you, Pauline.
Oh, Chief, it is such a pleasure and honor. You know, it's been 34 years since I met you. That long.
That long, Pauline, those were the days when both of us were younger.
I know, just a little bit, not too long ago. So, Chief, we're celebrating you today. We want to know, who is Rene Villanueva Senior? Tell us more about yourself.
Well, Rene Villanueva Senior is a Belizean, and I like to consider myself a good Belizean. So the rumors of you being born in Honduras is not true? Yes, just rumors, Pauline, that was spread by some people who didn't have anything else to say, and so they wanted to sell newspapers, I guess, and they came up with that rumor. But that is far from the truth. I was born on the first day of April, 1950, at number 19 Tiger Street in Belize City, at the nursing home of Nurse Anita Utley. And you know something, Pauline? In my office here at home, I have managed to procure the scale that I was wearing as a baby, and I can show that to you.
Wow, that's
right?
Amazing. Yes,
you know? So I will show that to you after the show.
Chief, you know, I know you 34 years, and I never knew you were born on Tiger Street, right near where I was born on Iguana Street.
You see, Pauline, that's the way it is. My mother was a midwife, right? And obviously Nurse Anita Utley was a colleague of hers. So when it was time for her to have her first child, she went to Nurse Anita Utley's nursing home, which was on Tiger Street, and that's where I was born.
Wow.
All right?
So tell us a little bit about your family, the size of your family, who are your parents, etc.
Okay, let's go right across the board. Which side do you want me to start first, the father side or the mother side?
Dad comes first.
Dad comes first.
Yes.
Okay, let's start with Dad. My father is Arthur Villanueva, was Arthur Villanueva, may he rest in peace. Edward Arthur Villanueva of Placencia, right? His father, or my grandfather, was Maurice Villanueva, also of Placencia. Okay. My grandmother, my father's mother, was Florence Ely, also of Placencia. Wow. So I have my father's roots in Placencia.
So your dad, we used to call him Gramps. Tell us a bit more about him.
Gramps, like I said, came from the Villanueva side of things. The Villanuevas, from what I am told, came across from Mexico many years during the caste wars. And the old man Villanueva used to fish in between Key Kaka and bring his, around Key Chapel area, and bring his produce into Belize town to sell and paddle dory and that sort of thing.
So he was a fisherman.
Right. So my grandfather Maurice ended up in Placencia, and that's where he married into the Ely family, and that's where my father obviously came from, right? So that is the heritage along Ely, and I'm related to the Garbuts and some of the other families in the area of Placencia and City River, right? You know.
A big family, I know that.
Oh yes, I'm related to so many people. It ain't funny here in Belize, right? So now my father met my mother when she was a rural nurse. She was the first rural nurse sent to Placencia to give health care.
Okay.
So she did health care between Placencia and St. Bite. Now, there are many stories of how they met. But if you don't mind, I could share my favorite story with you.
Sure, go
right?
ahead.
It is said that the nurse, my mother, used to paddle a dory across the lagoon, in the back of the lagoon from Placencia to St. Bite. There were no roads, obviously, at the time. Right? So it was either the lagoon or the sea. Obviously, the lagoon is the easiest place to paddle a dory. So she would paddle this dory, and one night, in returning from St. Bite to Placencia in the lagoon, there was a storm, and the dory capsized. And the people from Placencia came to look for her, and they found her in the bushes. They said, right, you know, and they said, no, we can't allow you to be traveling. We don't want to lose our nurse, so let's have somebody who knows the area, a fisherman, travel with you. And I think that's where Arthur came in and tried to carry the nurse around, and I guess things happened after that, right? You know, and so so I came along, you know, and
So you're the oldest?
I'm the oldest. I have 4 natural brothers and sisters from mother and father. 5 more were added to our family in Honduras.
Wow.
There were 9 of us growing up in Honduras, right?
Okay.
There was.
But you were born in Belize. What age did you go to Honduras?
No, this is the interesting part. No,
Okay.
my mother, being very religious, because my grandfather now, and my mother's father was Reverend James Alexander Christopher Elliott. That was his complete name, right? Reverend James Elliott was perhaps the first native black ordained Methodist minister in Belize, right? He was once principal of Wesley Boys School. He also was the pastor in Corozal and different parts of the country. And in Aoril Boom, he met my grandmother, the lady who became my grandmother, his wife,
What's her
and
name?
Margaret Gillett.
Okay.
So the Gillett's are related directly with us, right? So Margaret Gillett and Reverend Elliott obviously got married. My mother and my aunts and uncle, they came along as a result of that marriage, the Gillett and the Elliott,
Okay.
right?
Another big family.
Another big family again. So and then my grandfather Elliott then was sent by the Methodist Church to pastor the Methodist Church in La Ceiba, Honduras,
Okay.
right? Because it was the British Honduras district of the Methodist Church.
Okay.
So that district sent him to be the pastor in La Ceiba. And while in La Ceiba, he spent many years in La Ceiba. He spent 35 years of his life in La Ceiba. I was 7 years old. My mother had already left the nursing services of the government of then British Honduras, because she was, like I said, a nurse. And she had already opened her nursing home at the house at downstairs of 33 Freetown Road.
Right.
So she had a nursing home down there, right? And she would deliver babies and so to make a living. And she also did some spray painting work and that sort of thing. As we were little kids growing up, you know, and running around the yard, going to Ebenezer School and that sort of thing. As a matter of fact, the first school I went to was Rock Private School on Water Lane.
Okay.
Right? So I used to walk across the bridgeway to Water Lane.
That school before.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. I Because remember going to Rock Private School as a little boy, and sometimes they're making us stand on the chairs because we give trouble. Well, I don't know. Well, I was, 4 or 5 years old.
I don't believe that.
Yeah, but it was Rock Private School, on Water Lane, right? Yeah. Then Ebenezer School, and before, at 7 years old now, my mother walking on Queen Street by where Simon Collins on Queen Street, in that area there was the Christian Literature Center, right? And so she was looking in the show window, and she says that she saw a passage of scripture which guided her throughout her whole life. Remember, my grandfather was Reverend James Elliott. Right. So she obviously grew up that way. Yeah, and so she saw this passage of scripture that says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and soul and mind. In all your ways acknowledge him and he will direct your path. She says that she heard a voice telling her, Helen, are you acknowledging me in all your ways? And she said that she answered, no, Lord. And she said this voice told her clearly, right? Your father needs you in Honduras, right? So she said, okay. She came and she spoke with my dad, and my father agreed with her that, okay, if that's you, if God is calling you to go to Honduras to see your father, and so then so be it. So they closed on the nursing home and everything, did what they had to do, and took all of us by boat to Honduras. I was 7 years old, David was 5 years old, Rena was about 3, and Derek, I think, was about 1.5 or somewhere around there, right? And she took her 4 children by sea to Honduras, to La Ceiba, Honduras. He went. Wow. He went. And it turned out that indeed my grandfather needed her, because a year or two after, and I can still recall the strictness when I was a young boy of my grandfather when we lived in the house, and how he would discipline you and that kind of thing, But soon after she got there, a few years after she got there, the church, there started to be a dispute rose up in the church with my grandfather, which I think I need to write a book on. A dispute rose up in the Methodist church, right, in La Ceiba. And so my grandfather was in trouble indeed, and actually needed the younger person there. He was 83 years old at the time when that dispute happened. Wow. And so obviously my mother being there was like his anchor and what have you. So as a young boy, we used to run through the streets of La Ceiba, and so my grandfather had a school, an English school downstairs, so I used to go to that school, and then and so on.
English in La Ceiba or Spanish?
English, because remember, the influence of the British extended all the way into Nicaragua to the Mosquito Coast. Okay. So there was a lot of English-speaking people, and there still are, on the north coast of Honduras, Puerto Cortes, La Ceiba, Tela, and those were the areas that the Methodist Church operated on the coastline, and of course in Roatan, the Bay Islands. Oh. My mother was there at the correct time, and her father really needed her, right?
She actually went into the same ministry.
Well, she was support for him,
right? Okay.
And when I was 11 years old, my grandfather took it so hard that he decided to fast and pray for his errant flock. And so he refused to even drink water. And obviously he declined. And he declined so much that when he could not talk anymore or do anything more for himself, he was gurgling and praying, they took him to the hospital, got him brought him up as the best way they could, put him on a plane and brought him to Belize to die. Because he was 83, 84 years old. So they brought my grandfather to Belize City, and he died in Belize City in 1961, the same year of Hurricane Hattie. He died, I think, in May of 1961. Hattie hit later on that same year. But in 1961, when he passed away, I was 11 years old.
So were you and your family back in Belize then, or you were in Honduras?
That same year, my mother decided that we would stay in Belize, and so she enrolled us in Wesley College. Okay. At that time, Wesley College took students. They had 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, which were the equivalent to standard 5 and standard 6. So my brother, David, a little younger than I am, was placed in standard in 1A, and I was placed in 2A, which was the equivalent of standard 6. And from 2A, I would have gone to 3A and 4A, and then 5A, then right up to 6. You know, which have been the 4 high school years plus the 2 prep years. They call it prep, you know, the first and second years. So I was in 2A when my grandfather died in Worcester College. I'm sure that the adults knew that was the end for him. So they came with a recorder. They got a gentleman, Mr. Fraser, who lived right across the street from us, to come with one of those spool tape recorders, and he recorded his last message, which was a message of forgiveness for the people that had wronged him in Honduras.
Oh, so is that what I see on your wall? Forgiveness
and reconciliation. I remember as a kid listening to that message he was giving with his dying breath, almost his dying breath, and that stayed with me. It was recorded on a spool tape. My mother then put it on a cassette. Then I got my copy of the cassette. I put it on a CD. Then I put it on MP3, and I kept transferring it to technology because I was there when he spoke those words, and I promised myself that one day I would like to go to the church he had built and to the people who had wronged him and play back his message of forgiveness in his church, and I did it.
Very important message, forgiveness and reconciliation.
His message was a message of forgiveness to the people who had wronged him, because they did wrong him.
And it's so important you heard that message, because you then, and we'll get to that, but you then had to live that out in your life.
Well, of course, but you know, those are the things that shape your life, you know. So in those early days now, I continued going to Worcester College even after Hurricane Hattie. My mother thought that we had lost our lives in Hurricane Hattie. Now, Hurricane Hattie, the house was on Freetown Road, stood the test of time. There were hundreds of people in that house. My father and my uncle John, my father was in Belize, had stayed in Belize with myself and David, while my mother kept the other children in La Ceiba, in Honduras, in Puerto Cortes. By then she had moved to Puerto Cortes, right? And so when Hurricane Hattie came and the house was shaking and everything, I can remember as a little kid being under the table with they had some cloth, some towels around my neck in case we had to get out in the open, and so on. And all I could see from under the table were feet. The water was about 1 step away from being level with the floor. Right, and so on, and the house was just rocking like a boat, you know. But I think it's the weight of the amount of people that kept it anchored down, you know, because that house was just rocking like that, and it didn't go, right? It was just rocking and rocking, and I could still remember it, hearing the creaks and the water raining down.
I was just going to ask, what about the water rising?
Well, like I said, the water rose to 1 step below being level with the house, or 1 or 2 steps below.
The house was a bit high.
Was a bit high after the ground. But then it was like you were in a boat, because it was like rocking and what have you, glass breaking and all sort of things, right? I could still remember that night, Hurricane Hattie, vividly in you know. But my mother was, like I said, she was in Honduras, and she caught the first boat that she could have caught and came looking to see what has happened to her children here in Belize, right? And I can remember seeing her walking towards the house amongst all the ruins, and the skipping here and skipping there, you know, coming to see what had happened. By that time, we up in the attic, they looked down because, you know, no zinc, and there's no zinc up there, so the whole house stopped open, you know, and so on. And so she came and she took us back to Honduras. By then, 1961, I was 11 years old, right? That was Hurricane Hattie. So she took us back to Honduras. Yeah. Okay. And so in Honduras now, we went to Puerto Cortes this time, where she had ended up pastoring the church in Puerto Cortes, because they had lost the church in La Ceiba and Tela. Okay. So the only one she had left was the one in Puerto Cortes, and she took over the pastoring the church in Puerto Cortes. So we went to Puerto Cortes, and I spent some time there, and she brought us back. I think by the time I was 12, I was back again in Worcester College, right? So I did 2A, finished 2A, and I did 3B. I guess because of I got it back and forth, I ended up in 3B. And then I did the entire year of 3B, which was equivalent to first form. right, at 13. And then by the time I was 14, I was in 4B, right? So again, she came for holidays, Christmas holidays, and she said, okay, well, let me take the kids to Honduras for Christmas. So she took my brother and myself to Honduras for Christmas to spend with the rest of the family. Now, while I was there at age 14 now, I am, having a good time and what have you, I felt that I did not want to come back to Belize. So I tell myself, I said, I'll stay here and become a Honduran, right? And what have you. So she respected my wish, and she kept us in Honduras.
So you went to school there?
So I went to school in Honduras again. But she wanted me to have a sort of English education. So she enrolled me in American High School in Chicago, Illinois, by correspondence. I was student.
You were way ahead of your time, Chief.
See, I was student 704847 of the American High School on Drexel Avenue in Chicago, USA, but studying by correspondence. Do my high school by correspondence. So now, all my life now, I say, well, I will stay in Honduras. As far as I'm concerned, my life is set in Honduras. Strange enough, she baptized us during that period of time. She baptized her children. We lived right by the sea, so we went. She took us. I can recall the day I was baptized. By her. She took us into the sea, did her baptismal service, and I sat down. I went into the bathroom, and as clear as I'm sitting here talking to you today, my whole life ran in front of my eyes. Boom, 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 boom. I didn't understand it, but I knew that I would end up either preaching or something like that.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because I'm still baffled how you didn't end up in that ministry.
Well, God knows best, right? Because at age 14, remember, a year later, when I was still there, we just came to spend two months of, I'm going back, 2 years, 14, when we came to spend 2 months in Belize, Christmas in Belize with the family, right? Now, my godfather was George Mackenzie. And George Mackenzie was an announcer at Radio Belize, right? And I used to admire George Mackenzie because Radio Belize was the strongest thing in the region, and you could listen to Radio Belize like a local signal in Honduras. So George Mackenzie was my hero, basically being my godfather as well. So Christmas Eve, 1964, at age 14, while we were in Belize for holiday, remember now, living in Honduras, my mother said, take this Christmas card to Radio Belize for your godfather. I went and I took the Christmas card. Now, I had a little Christmas job with my cousin Lawrence Vernon. Larry Vernon, I know if you're familiar with Larry Vernon, Dylan Vernon, Marlon. Larry Vernon is my first cousin, right? So, I took the Christmas card now for my godfather, right? And he took me up, and he came down, received me, and said, let's go upstairs. And he took me up to Radio Belize in the elevator, right? They had an elevator in the Albert Catus building, and I was, wow, right, elevator for the first time.
Probably the only one in Belize.
I think Barclays Bank had the second one, right? And so we went up in the elevator. He took me into the studios, showed me how radio worked. This makes this work. I sat behind the microphone, and when he was going to talk, he would shh, and then he would say, this is Radio Belize, the voice. And I knew that's what I wanted to do.
Wow.
Right? Because when I was a little boy at 7 years old, before I went to Honduras, I had a gramophone record player that my grandfather had given me on one of his trips to Belize. And I used to play the records, the 78, I spin fast with some big needle, right? And I used to play those records and pretend to be announcing like the voices I heard in the box. So I was only 7 when I was, but now here I am now, getting the idea how those voices get into the box by my godfather. So he showed me around. And Pauline, before I left to go back to Honduras, every evening that I could have done it, I would sit down in front of the Albert Catus building, right where Scotiabank is right now. It was an open lot, Harley's open lot. I would sit on the edge there, and look up to the Albert Catus building, play back in my mind what my godfather showed me, and imagine myself doing it. And I tell myself, I say, I want to work in that building one day. I don't know how, I don't know when, but I would like to work in that building. That's where I want to work, right? Now, that didn't make any sense because I went back to Honduras. Mm-hmm. And in Honduras now, at 16, 17, I said to myself, I want to become a Honduran, You find your little girlfriend and that kind of thing. So, I want to stay, my life is setting over here.
When we come back, Villanueva shares the incident that changed his life forever. We take a break to hear from our partners. Silkgrass Farms, National Bank of Belize, the Barry, Minister Kevin Bernard, and Del Martin.
You da you and me da me. But guess what? All are we the one.
At Silkgrass Farms, we believe in more than just growing food. We're cultivating a future. Across 9,000 acres in the foothills of the Maya Mountains, our family of farms grows a vibrant array of crops: coconuts, citrus, cacao, watermelons, avocados. But our mission goes beyond harvests. Through sustainable agriculture, we are not just growing crops, we're strengthening ecosystems and reversing the impacts of climate change. Silkgrass Farms is a part of a global movement, transforming modern food systems into living stories of nutrition, nature, and people. From our fields to your table, every product tells a story of health and hope for the future.
Your dream home isn't just a house, it's where your future takes shape. At NBB, we go beyond financing. Our partnership with trusted professionals ensure you're supported at every step. We simplify the process, offering expert advice, personalized services, and fast approvals to make your journey stress-free. With NBB, you're not just buying a house, you're investing in your future with confidence and ease.
Action.
At NBB, we don't just help you finance your dream, we help you live it. National Bank of Belize, your partner every step of the way.
Debari is your one-stop store of choice. We have an array of electronics and accessories to keep you connected. Your home will be the envy of your friends when you choose from a wide variety of household appliances. We can help you dress the entire family in style and comfort with our selection of clothing and footwear. Visit our store on Albert Street in Belize City, San Pedro, La Isla Bonita, Park Street in Orange Walk Town, Belmopan, and San Ignacio, Santa Elena. Debari, get more, pay less.
Vamos! Vamos bien con Kevin Bernard, Kevin Bernard, Kevin Bernard, Kevin Bernard. Champion, champion, Kevin is the champion, 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 champion. Kevin Bernard is the people's champion, champion, champion. Kevin is the champion, 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 champion. South, East and West, Kevin is a true champion. 2020, Kevin came with a vision. Executed well, he's a man on a mission. The work continues with new innovation. Plan Belize 2.0 activation. Benefiting the West, North to South and East. Infrastructure and opportunities. Plenty get done, plenty more to come. Kevin Bernard, you can continue depend on. Champion, champion, Kevin is the champion, 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 champion. Kevin Bernard is the people's champion, champion, champion. Kevin is the champion, 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 champion. South, East and West, Kevin is a true champion. Sports development, woman empowerment, infrastructure, youth involvement. movement. Heart of a champion, full confident. Astonishing leader, no argument. Relentlessly with a passion and drive. Natural born leader, no one get deprived. Dedicated to serving and provide. Belize in good hands, no one can deny. Champion, 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 champion. Kevin Bernard is the people's champion. Champion, 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 champion. North, south, east and west, Kevin is a true champion. Champion, 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 champion. Hey, one time for the champion. Hey, two time for the champion. Hey, three time for the champion. Hey, everybody shout it out loud now. Champion, champion, Kevin is the champion, 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 champion. Kevin Bernard is the people's champion. Champion, champion, Kevin is the champion, 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 champion. North, south, east and west, Kevin is a true champion.
Celebration time. It don't matter what part of the jewel they come from. You that you and me that me. But guess what? All are we the one. See what I mean?
What changed that now?
At age 17, right? My mother decides to bring us for Christmas holidays once again, right? To the family. So we came across, I will never forget that journey because to me, we left Puerto Cortes at midnight, right? We were stamped out, left at midnight because at that time things were easy to do, right? And in a sailing boat, right? The following morning when dawn came and so we're in the middle of the Gulf of Honduras. And the sailing boat goes up here and you look down like that and you see it go right down, back again, blam, and it goes up again and no breeze in the Gulf and those big swells. And you just keep bringing up whatever you could bring up or you can't bring up, right? Now, the evening now we arrive at Hunting Key. Mosquito, I've never felt so much mosquitoes in my life, but at the same time I said, put up with the mosquito run and go back and sleep on a sailing boat, right? You know, so we lit whatever we could do and on the beach here at Hunting Key and what have you. And then we sailed into Placencia and so on. But in Placencia, my father was waiting for us, and so my uncle John Ely and others were waiting for us. And so they brought us by boat to be the Uncle John's boat, the Hustler. We were aboard that going to Belize City. We were transferred from the sailing boat, no? And looking in the water, and it's another moment in your life you don't forget because when you make your major decisions. Looking in the water, and you know, we call them pampas, but the dolphins, you know, really up and down in the water, and I admiring them. When something told me deep inside, almost like a voice speaking to you saying, don't go back to Honduras, stay in Belize. Just like that, nothing else. And I go like, hey, this is where I make up my mind to stay in Belize. You know, and I found it strange. I thought about it the rest of the journey. I got back to Belize, and after I got the courage, I went to my mother and said, you know, this is what happened. And she said, but son, your life is already set in Honduras. I have you enrolled in Bible school. You even have a job waiting for you at the radio station in Bible school because I'd already started working in radio in Puerto Cortes at La Voz del Atlántico. I didn't even tell you how I started radio. You know, I don't know if I could divert there.
Let's divert because that's important because
Before I started
that
radio.
right, yeah.
Okay, now in Honduras, in Puerto Cortes, there was a radio station, two radio stations, one named Radio Cortes, and the other was La Voz del Atlántico. La Voz del Atlántico was the older station, right? There were small stations compared to Radio Belize, obviously. Radio Belize had 20,000 watts. La Voz del Atlántico had about 600 or 700, so I have to tell you the difference. Yeah, didn't have the reach. So, La Voz del Atlántico, I used to listen to a gentleman by the name of Mike Recarte on La Voz del Atlántico.
I've heard you say that name, yeah.
And so, listening to Mike, he did the only English show. My mother had got me a job, you see, in my father, really, because my father was the one that said, hey, you got to do some work. You just stay here to read book. And, so 15-year-old, I got a job at Agencia La Curaçao, which ironically owns courts today, right? Agencia La Curaçao, as a messenger boy.
Okay.
So
you really started growing up.
Yeah, I used to sweep the place, dust out the furniture, go collect bills, people setting their dogs for him because they don't want to pay, and that kind of thing, and so on. So I used to ride a bicycle and collect bills and what have you at age 15, right? Now, listening to La Voz del Atlántico, one day I got the courage to go and meet Miguel Recarte. As I was entering La Voz del Atlántico office, I bumped into this gentleman. And he said, little boy, what's happening to you? I said, sir, I'm looking, in Spanish obviously, I'm here to see Mike Recarte. He says, well, I am Mike Recarte. I said, well, I listen to your show all day, every day, He did this 1 hour English show on this all Spanish radio station. Wow. So it was unique, right? So I said, he said, what are you doing? I said, well, I come here to meet you. He said, well, I'm going to present the show now, so do you want to come with me? I said, yes. And the bus fare at the time only cost 10 cents, but he paid the 10 cents for me, and we got on the bus, and we went up to the radio station, which was out, the studios, the office was downtown, this was happening at the office, and the studios were on a hill outside Puerto Cortes. So we went by bus to the radio station studios, right? The signature tune for his show started to play. Fascination by Billy Vaughn was the signature tune. And while the signature tune was playing, Mike Recarte looked at me and said, you opened those letters and you read them? Come, you'll help me present my show today. Wow. And so I was trembling and right away, But I did the show with him. And after the show was over, what was the question you think I asked? Can I come back tomorrow?
And what did he say?
He said yes. Okay. So I started going back every day. And eventually there was a vacancy at the radio station by the time I'm 16 for a technical operator to spin records and what have you. And guess who got a job? Me, right? Because I'm knocking around the station every minute, all day, right? What's
significant, I believe, is you envision yourself already. You had already envisioned yourself at BCB, no? At Radio Belize.
No, the dream at Radio Belize was when I was 14.
Right, but you already had that dream. You already envisioned that.
As a matter of fact, at La Voz del Atlántico, we listened to Radio Belize. We would set our clocks off Radio Belize because Radio Belize time was a reliable time. Right. So we would set our clocks off Radio Belize. And I would tell my colleagues, one day I'm going to work at Radio Belize. Wow. And they would laugh, right? I said, one day I'm going to work at Radio Belize. They said, you're just talking, just talking for talk's sake. Listen to how those guys sung. You know him sung close to them, how you are work there, and so on. Because at that time Radio Belize obviously spoke the Queen's English. This is Radio Belize, very sophisticated, And so how would this leave a 16-year-old boy talk about him going to work there just to survive on this radio station? Right. My mother decided, no, okay, you want to be a preacher just like their grandfather and myself? We're going to enroll you in Bible school in Tegucigalpa, the capital of Honduras. Okay. So I was enrolled in Bible school, set to go to Bible school, right? And I already had procured a little opening at the radio station they had in Tegucigalpa, the capital of Honduras, the evangelical voice of Honduras, La Voz Evangelica de Honduras, right? So I said, okay, I could do my radio, what I love there, and at the same time study to be this pastor, right? 2 in 1, right? So that was, for me, that was the life I was going back to in Honduras when I was looking in the water at the dolphins, like I said, right? And when I heard the voice said, don't go back to Honduras, stay in Belize. I told my mother when I got the courage to, right? And she said, but son, your life is already set in Honduras. You're already in, everything is set for you and this and that. Why would you, well, I said, Mom, this is what happened and this is how I feel that I should stay in Belize, and I really want to stay in Belize, because I felt that like, when you're just, your life just, your thing going on in your life just transformed like that. Mm-hmm. It was like, okay, one of those moments, right? I said, I feel like I must stay in Belize. And so she said, I said, okay, let's make a deal, Mom, right? Remember at the time, until you're 21, you're under your mother's care, right? So, your parents, right? So, not 18, 21, right? So, I said, let's make a deal, right? Let's pray about it, because I knew, let's pray about it. If I get a job in Belize while we are here, then I will interpret it as God's will that I stay in Belize.
Important, God's will.
Right? If I don't get a job during the 2 months that we're here, then it will be that I'm supposed to go back to Honduras. And I promise you, Mom, I will be the best pastor you ever seen. Right? So we prayed. And then one day we went to Aoril Boom. You remember, we related to the Gillets. Right? And the folks in Aoril Boom. So she went visiting. And I overheard a conversation between her and George Price's sister, who was her cousin, right? Miss Minna, right? And so Miss Minna said, Helen, what are you going to do with the boys? And she said, well, she explained that Rene wants to stay in Belize and that she made this agreement with me. And I heard when Miss Minna said, well, tell her to go see George, man. George my helper, right? I said, that's a good idea. So I got the courage
to go see George Price.
Yes, I got the courage to go and see George Price. And so Brad Patico, my cousin, went with me. And the conversation with Mr. Price, Premier Price, went something like this. Premier, I went in alone. I was scared. Scared.
Imagine. 17, right?
I was 17 years old, going for 18, and I was scared. Then he asked me, what kind of job you're looking for? I said, I know you're building the new capital, so a job in the construction of the new capital is like building the nation. He says, you don't look like anybody that knows construction work. You're just a boy. He said, what were you doing in Honduras? So I said, I was working at this little radio station named La Voz del Atlántico, and I took out my little ID card from La Voz del Atlántico and I pushed it across the desk, right, as a technical operator, right? And he picks it up and he looks at it and he says, oh, Radio Belize is looking for a temporary Spanish continuity announcer. You think you could handle that? I said, Premier, I am a good technical operator. I listen to Radio Belize. I don't have the quality, the education that it takes. He said, listen, man. He said, that's all I got to offer you, man. That's all I have to offer you, right? So he gets on his telephone, right, this little dial phone, and he calls across the acting chief broadcasting officer, who was Lester Young, who was Lois Young Barrow's father, right? And he was the chief engineer, but the chief broadcasting officer was on holiday, right? So Lester Young comes across now. Yes, Premier. And I'm frightened because Lester is a tall person, imposing person. And I said, wow, And he says, Premier obviously told him, this is Raul. I said, Premier, it's Rene Villanueva. Rene Villanueva. No, he worked at a little radio station in Honduras. I know you need a Spanish continuity announcer. See if we fit the bill, man. See if we fit the bill. And he pushed his hand around me and pushed me out of the office along with Lester Young, right? So Lester Young looked at me and said, young man, come for your voice test, right? So I went to Radio Belize now for the second time, going up there now a few days later, and all nervous. I mean, I was a bundle of nerves. And they gave me an English script to read and a Spanish script to read. Because I did the English show with Mike Riccardi and I thought that maybe I would star in English, I read the English first. And then I looked up and saw people laughing at my English. Oh my God. Right? Like, how dare you? Right? Yeah. And then I did the Spanish. I rattled off the Spanish. And when I rattled off the Spanish and I looked up, they were not laughing anymore. They were serious. Yep. Right? And so one of them came to me after I left. I think it was Seferino. He came to me and said, young man, your English? Awful.
I could just hear him.
But your Spanish is perfect.
Impressive.
And that is what we're looking for. And let me tell you something else, young man. You got one great voice. I could sit in there, you and be a great announcer one day. Right? And I like what I said was, yes, sir, and move away. I didn't know who the heck I was talking to. Right? And so I went back to get my results a few days later. You know, when I was told to come back for the results. So I went back for the results. And I got the job at Radio Belize at $15 a week as a temporary Spanish continuity announcer.
But you got in.
But I got in, right?
And that's where the story really starts.
That's where the story starts, right? No. I ran home. I could never forget running home across Big Bridge, Swing Bridge. Running home, Pauline, right? To tell my mother that I'm staying in Belize, right? And so I was running over Big Bridge. Esta es Radio Belize, la voz de la nueva nación centroamericana de Belize en el corazón de la cuenca caribeña. And practicing what have you, and running across the bridge like a little crazy kid, you know, bouncing in the house. And I told my mother, Mom, God has spoken, I'm staying in Belize.
Your mother must have said, man.
Right? And I told her I'm staying in Belize. I got the job at Radio Belize and $15 a week. And that's how it started. One of the strange things, Pauline, is that while in Puerto Cortes growing up, I had a picture of George Price in my bedroom. Well, an old picture of George Price. I didn't know him, but I had his picture there. And I used to say, you know, one day I will take over from him. Right? I used to say that as a kid to my friends. I said, that is the president of my country, because, you know, Honduras is a republic. So to my Honduran friends, I would say, that's the president of my country, and one day I will take over from him. That's what I would say.
You're to preempt my questions, Chief. Because I think you're ready for that. But
in another way maybe, but not definitely not in the political way. But you know, so I would look at that, right? And so I would aspire to be. So George Price was always somebody I admired. Now here he is sending me to Radio Belize.
Right. Well, Chief, one of the things that I noticed, and I want to ask you, what are the lessons that you learned back then? But what I notice is, like, you are always encouraging others. And I've had that personal experience, and recently when my son went to see you, I think right after Christmas, you got him right into the radio station with you. So, you know, that's something to be admired.
Well, Pauline, you see, we don't know things on our own. I think God inspires the way things happen. And I think if you could visualize something and just allow it to happen and go with it, then it will work out, you know. I didn't know what was happening when I stayed here at age 17, going for 18. You know, my mother went back to Honduras, took my brothers and sisters back with her, you know, and I stayed here on my own with my aunt, right? And had to work, get married when I was 20, meet Susan, and I get married when I was 20, she me 18, going for 19, and we're still there together, you know, and so on. But I always knew, for some reason, what the next step would be. And I think that is important. If you listen, because the connection with God is inside of you. And if you listen to that connection carefully, it guides you. Now, I always think I was guided to what I would eventually become. And I can recall there are instances in my life when I decided, but the first, I was a temporary Spanish continuity announcer. Now, how temporary, I didn't like the word temporary in front of my name, so I wanted to get married. And I wanted to get married. Now, so there was a technical operator vacancy, and I applied for that and got in, and the permanent establishment was a technical operator, right?
I think that's so significant because you're this second close friend I have that have told me that you actually envision yourself in what you want for your life. Yeah. And I think that's something people lack, Chief. That is what makes people great.
Well, yeah, you have to have a vision as to where you want to go and latch onto it, and there's no straight road to it. Now, the first vision I had when I was 7 years old, like I told you, was to own my own radio station. But because when I was playing that music, I was saying I'm playing it on my own radio station. That's what I was telling myself. Wow. No, I didn't know how the road will turn out, you know. and what paths it will take. Now, coming back to starting now at Radio Belize, I became that technical operator permanently, and then got married, like I said, and then by the time I was 24 years old, when I was 23, guess what happened? Mrs. Sonia Pinto, may I salute her, she's still a good friend of mine. Mrs. Sonia Pinto resigned as a bilingual announcer. By then my English had improved. Okay. And so I applied for the post that was left vacant by Mrs. Sonia Pinto. And I was given that post by the Public Services Commission. And so I became a full-time now bilingual announcer at Radio Belize, right, at 23 years old. At 24, right, there was a vacancy for me to go and study at the BBC in London. So I was very humbled and what have you to have had that experience of studying at the BBC in London. Now, things happen to you in life that teaches you lessons. There was a lesson I learned that stayed with me all along. Coming after my studies in London, I had saved whatever money I could have for a trip across to Europe, Holland, Belgium, France. There was this tour that an agency was giving. And so I arranged and stayed for that tour, right? I left and got on a boat to Belgium and did the continental tour. Coming back into England, I am told that I cannot enter the United Kingdom. What? Right? And I am told that I need to go back to Ostend in Belgium, which is the nearest British embassy at the time, and get a visa to enter the United Kingdom. And I go, but this is your passport. This is a British passport. It has the British seal on it. You know, it says I'm a British subject. You know, they say, yeah, subject. Precisely that, right? I'm not a citizen, I'm a subject. Right? So it says, well, I'm going to get an interpretation of that part there, right? Anyway, I could not enter the United Kingdom. I argued my point as a young, aggressive student. I said, no, I need to enter. I'm flying to New York tomorrow morning. And they denied, they said no, right? Oh. And I said, then they started telling me to move aside because I'm holding up the queue, the line. Yes. And I refused, obviously, to move aside. And in that now, an officer came and said, let him through, a sergeant, right? Let him pass, right? And the officer stopped my passport through it. I can recall vividly it fell on the ground because he was like, boom, you know, and it's a window. And so I picked up my passport. I don't know if he meant to throw it on the ground or not. Like, so I can't accuse him of that. Maybe it was just accidentally. And I picked it up and I said, oh, this is what George Price means when he's talking about independence, right? Here I am, a second-class citizen in the country whose flag I fly.
And you're a subject.
You know, I said, oh, this is what independent, you know, it is easier for me to have been a Belizean from my own Belize independent country and being told I cannot enter the United Kingdom. That's fine. Right. Because I could tell you, no, you cannot come to my country neither. Exactly. You know, but you run my country and I can't enter, no. You know, and so I learned my lesson. I went back and I said, I will be an active part of the independence movement of Belize. And that made up my mind that Belize had to get its independence, and we had to do what we had to do for Belize to become an independent country.
And I think that was a significant experience.
It's significant, because you saw it in person, right? And what it is to be a citizen of a colony as against being citizen of an independent country. I lived in Honduras before. That was an independent country, or is an independent country, right? So it's a whole... You get to, oh, this is the difference here, right? You know, they can do what they want in my country, but I can't even go there unless I get permission, right? So, okay then, I understand what colonialism is all about. Right. So let's go Belize, you have to get your independence. And so then I said, I want to be a part of the Belize's independence. I dreamt of that, right? And obviously things progressed. I kept going up to the ladder at Radio Belize.
Yeah, I think you moved rather quickly, right?
Well, I don't know if you'll call it quickly because, I ended up starting the first correspondent network for Radio Belize after I came back from the BBC, which Paul Mahong was an integral member of it, along with the late Belize Carballo and others. Okay. They formed part of that first correspondent network that I set up in 1974 after I came back from the BBC.
What did that network do, for those who don't know?
For the first time, you had almost every night live reports via telephone from the district towns in the country, right?
So uniting the nation now, connecting
the country together,
okay.
Right? And so there are many other little things that I did when I returned because I was happy. You know what I would do, Pauline? I would say I have a day off today, Pauline. I know you work in the newsroom. I will trade my day off with you. I'll give you my day off and I will do your shift in the newsroom. Because I wanted to learn every aspect of Radio Belize. Everything.
You were preparing yourself for what was coming without realizing it.
Well, in a way I did, because I can remember looking at my boss's office and saying one day I would sit in that office.
So you claimed it.
I don't know when, but one day I would sit in that office.
In our next segment, Villanueva shared how he rose up the ranks at Radio Belize and how the Broadcasting Corporation of Belize came into being. We step aside to hear from our partners, Silkgrass Farms, National Bank of Belize, The Barry, Minister Kevin Bernard, and Del Martin.
At Silkgrass Farms, we believe in more than just growing food. We're cultivating a future. Across 9,000 acres in the foothills of the Maya Mountains, our family of farms grows a vibrant array of crops: coconuts, citrus, cacao, watermelons, avocados. But our mission goes beyond harvests. Through sustainable agriculture, we are not just growing crops, we're strengthening ecosystems and reversing the impacts of climate change. Silkgrass Farms is a part of a global movement, transforming modern food systems into living stories of nutrition, nature, and people. From our fields to your table, every product tells a story of health and hope for the future.
Your dream home isn't just a house, it's where your future takes shape. At NBB, we go beyond financing. Our partnership with trusted professionals ensure you're supported at every step. We simplify the process, offering expert advice, personalized services, and fast approvals to make your journey stress-free. With NBB, you're not just buying a house, you're investing in your future with confidence and ease.
Action.
At NBB, we don't just help you finance your dream, we help you live it. National Bank of Belize, your partner every step of the way.
Debari is your one-stop store of choice. We have an array of electronics and accessories to keep you connected. Your home will be the envy of your friends when you choose from a wide variety of household appliances. We can help you dress the entire family in style and comfort with our selection of clothing and footwear. Visit our store on Albert Street in Belize City, San Pedro, La Isla Bonita, Park Street in Orange Walk Town, Belmopan, and San Ignacio, Santa Elena. Debari, get more, pay less.
Vamos! Vamos bien con Kevin Bernard, Kevin Bernard, Kevin Bernard, Kevin Bernard. Champion, champion, Kevin is the champion, 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 champion. Kevin Bernard is the people's champion, champion, champion. Kevin is the champion, 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 champion. South, East and West, Kevin is a true champion. 2020, Kevin came with a vision. Executed well, is a man on a mission. The work continues with new innovation. Plan Belize 2.0 activation. Benefiting the west, north to south and east. Infrastructure and opportunities. Plenty get done, plenty more to come. Heavy burner, you can continue depend on. Champion, champion, Kevin is the champion, 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 champion. Kevin Bernard is the people's champion. Champion, champion, Kevin is the champion, 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 champion. North, south, east and west, Kevin is a true champion. Sports development, woman empowerment, infrastructure, youth involvement. Heart of a champion, full confident. Astonishing leader, no argument. Relentlessly with a passion and drive. Natural born leader, no one gets deprived. Dedicated to serving and provide. Belize in good hands, no one can deny. Champion, champion, Kevin is the champion, 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 champion. Kevin Bernard is the people's champion. Champion, champion, Kevin is the champion, 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 champion. North, south, east and west, Kevin is a true champion. Champion, 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 champion. Hey, one time for the champion. Hey, two time for the champion. Hey, three time for the champion. Hey, everybody shout it out loud now. Champion, champion, Kevin is the champion, 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 champion. Kevin Bernard is the people's champion. Champion, champion, Kevin is the champion, 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 champion. North, south, east and west, Kevin is a true champion.
Celebration time. It don't matter what part of the jewel they come from. You that you and me that me. But guess what? All are we the one. See what I mean?
Rene, you have a very powerful message, because more young people need to hear this. Young people feel like, oh, life is hopeless and I don't have anywhere to go.
Set your goals as you go, but there's no straight road. So, but in 1977, I knew I had to get a promotion or something. There was a vacancy now for assistant program organizer, right? The other program organizer was Tom Greenwood, and so there was a vacancy for a Spanish program organizer for the Spanish broadcasts of Radio Belize. Assistant program organizer. A program organizer was the head, and the chief broadcasting officer was above the program organizer. So you're like 1, 2, 3. And so I realized I couldn't get it unless I did management. So I enrolled in the Belize Institute of Management. I was
to get to the top job.
Well, I didn't know what I was doing. My eye was as to where I wanted to go. I knew the ultimate goal was to own my own radio station. But how would you own your own radio station if not even a second radio station is allowed to take place in Belize, right? So, but we were on the road, right? So now, I became a graduate of the Belize Institute of Management. I took a course in supervisory management. When my boss at the time, Aoril Witt, the chief broadcasting officer, saw that I was doing this on my own initiative, right? He said, what? I'll get the Public Service Commission to pay for this course fee because I've admired your initiative and what have you. The Public Service Commission says, no, this is a private thing, we won't do that. I said, boss, don't worry, I pay for my own thing, right? And I paid for my course, and I graduated from the Belize Institute of Management in 1978. I got my diploma in supervisory management. Okay. Now, armed with my diploma in supervisory management, my certificate of broadcasting at the BBC and my experience, it wasn't hard to promote me to assistant program organizer, right? So I became assistant program organizer at Radio Belize, in charge of all Radio Belize's Spanish broadcast. I did more than was demanded of me. As a matter of fact, I learned even the library system, and the librarian could have finally go and leave because I understood the library system. I could, beside my job, do his job as well. Anyway, that's another.
You were taking time off, and instead of staying and relaxing, you were just working everybody's job.
Overnight, I would dismantle the studio and put it back together without telling nobody nothing, but that's another story.
Did you ever spend time alone, like you would just go off and envision these things, how these things were coming to you?
Yes, there were times I would just be alone and I would just look at and say and feel from inside what I want to do and what is the next step I need to take. For example, Pauline, after becoming that program organizer, I realized I need to get business experience. Because how could you run a... So I started up my own private business, a record shop called Music World, Your World of Music, right? Which became a very prominent record shop, so that I could learn the buy and sell, the techniques of business, the balancing books and that kind of thing.
Got into the food business at one point, right?
Yeah, that was when I was at the Vogue.
Okay.
But just before I get there now, the government in 1979, right, changed George Price from being Minister of Broadcasting, and C.L.B. Rogers, the Deputy Prime Minister, became Minister of Broadcasting. Now, whenever these changes happen, you look at it, and I said, I need to leave. So I decided it's time for me to go, right? But they said, but how you want? I said, I am going, but I'm coming back, right? But I need to go now, right? And so I left in 1980, just before Belize's independence.
Right before, yeah.
Just before Belize's independence, right? In 1979, 1980, so I left, right? Because I did not like what was happening in the department at the time, right? And Aoril Waite had already left. He was promoted. Eustace Usher was promoted. So the way how the department was being handled, I was not in line with what I stood for, but I stood for as well. So I knew I had to go. And Francis Gegg had just returned, and they were looking for a marketing director for the Vogue Limited. The Vogue at that time was like the third largest business in Belize. And so I used to do the Vogue advertisements on Radio Belize. And so because I was familiar with them, they offered me the job as a marketing manager. Wow. So I said, I need private sector experience, so let me take it. I knew it was a time to leave Radio Belize and to go on and learn private sector management. So I worked at the Vogue for 2.5 years, I think it was, as marketing manager. I gave them 2 Christmas.
That entrepreneurial experience to be able to move towards your real goal, which was to own your own radio station. But you also knew that you had to be involved in Belize's independence, right? So how does this all tie in here?
Let's see how I can explain it, Pauline. Let's go to Belize's independence first, all right? There was obviously a whole deal of controversy at the time of Belize's independence with the heads of agreement, etc., right? I understood perfectly what was happening, what the heads of agreement actually meant and what have you. But of course, there were people who were against it and so on. Now, while I was at the Vogue, I can remember the then leader of the opposition used to visit the Vogue. And I would talk to him about independence. And, I tell him, I say, it would be good if you and Mr. Price could be on the same stage on Independence Day, so we could have a united independence. His reply was, Rene, the party will never allow me to do that, right? And what have you, okay? Now, going back now to my role now, I heard the announcement made for Belize's date of independence by Mr. Price. But then I realized that nothing was being said on Radio Belize. No, I'm not working there anymore. I go there, but I still have access to it because I maintained a good relationship with the Minister C.L.B. Rogers, and he would still allow me to go and present my Saturday show, the Vogue Top 10, live, right? And so I went to Assad Schumann. Assad Schumann was in charge of the Independence Secretariat. So I said, Minister, we're moving to independence. People are not being prepared where advertisements are concerned on the radio, right? Because remember, Radio Belize is the only media in the country, right? He said, you're right, He said, what are you doing? I said, well, I came to you with this concern. That evening I went there, I was taken to an independence committee meeting, right? And next thing you know, I did the publicity on Radio Belize for the independence of Belize. They put Radio Belize at my disposal. I could just walk up there and record the ads, make sure that I said play this as much as possible. That kind of liberty.
Right.
I got that kind of go ahead. And so most of the messages you heard for Belize's independence were done in my voice, and Francis Gegg helped me with a few of them, right? And what have you. And I could recall when Asachuan would have the Festival of Solidarity for the Independence of Belize, like bringing people together. He would be the English voice and I was the Spanish voice, and so we would be together like that, and so on. And as it would turn out, by Independence Eve, my body was already run down. I was everywhere leading up to independence. Mm-hmm. So by Independence Eve, my body was already run down. And so I got some fever. I got fevers and chills and whatnot. And I spent Independence Eve in my bed, trembling and vibrating and crying, because I couldn't be out there when the flag was being lowered, listening to it on the radio and crying. The following morning I was to MC at Independence Hill. I couldn't do it. I think it was several ways that ended up doing it. But I was to do it. And it was like wow. So for me it was like a blow, right? And so I promised myself that I would MC as many of Belize's independence ceremonies as I could subsequently. And I
definitely have.
I've done well about 35 or so, or 34, 35 of Belize's amount of independence ceremonies, which I think is a record all by itself, So I feel good about it because it means a lot to me. The independence meant a lot because of that experience I told you about earlier. So going on now with the story, you asked me about the burgers and what have you.
Yeah, so I want to know, did you go back full time at that point to BCB, or you're still working part time?
I left the Vogue.
Okay.
And concentrated on developing my record shop and my hamburger chain, Super B, Belize's finest burgers. Right. I did not like being called the burger man. For some reason when people say, see the burger man there, I go like, I don't like that. We built Super B 1. Okay. On the ground flat of Freetown. Okay. Super B 2 was on Cemetery Road. Super B 3 was on Queen Street. Oh. And I was building Super B 4 on Albert Street. So the burgers were doing well. Right? My sister Darlene was the accountant, and so we were doing okay. Right? And that was the only source of income I had, was the burger shop and the record shop. Right? For about 6 months. Right? But I always wanted to go back to Radio Belize. Because when I left, I remember I told him I will come back. All right? So now there's advertising for a post of a chief broadcasting officer.
There we go.
Because after independence, the station had run down. There was no engineer, no program organizer. After independence, everything was like on a decline. Wow. Right? And so there was the need for a chief broadcasting officer. I did not have the educational qualifications that they were asking for. They were asking for a university degree, and I did not have that, right? And so I applied for the job, but I still applied for the job. They gave me the appointment on a 6 months basis. So you're appointed chief broadcasting officer for a period of 6 months. Her Excellency the Governor General. And because they asked me if I would take a test, I said, any test you give me, I pass. That's what I told the permanent secretary, right? By the time the 4th month was up, the minister comes, can I borrow your office? I said, of course, minister, you can borrow my office. Permanent secretary goes in and what have you. And my former employer, Mr. Gegg, visits, and then he walks out and he goes. And then the minister calls me in. This is before the 4th month is up, right? Of the 6 months appointment. The minister calls me in and he says, Rene, I am so impressed with what you are doing here at the broadcasting department. I cannot afford to lose you. Right? Okay. So I am not waiting for any 6 months to be up. I'm advising the Governor General to appoint you now as permanently as Chief Broadcasting Officer. And so I became the second and last Belizean to formally, because they were acting Chief Broadcasting Officers in between, Hipólito, Anthony Sylvester, etc., acted as Chief Broadcasting, even Ernesto for a while, right? But to formally be appointed Chief Broadcasting Officer, I was the second and last Chief Broadcasting Officer in this country, right? Fully appointed by the government of Belize. Lasted through 2 elections. I was appointed by a PUP administration, right? And in 1985, the UDP won, at the end of 84. I packed up my box because I knew already that chief broadcasting officers in the Caribbean are changed whenever the government changed, because you're the mouthpiece of the government, basically. You talk on behalf of the government. So I packed up my box, right? And I was waiting for them to tell me, well, young man, please go. Here's your substitute, right? Anyway, the Honorable Colonel Thompson, a gentleman for whom I have a whole lot of respect, and I respect his memory tremendously, became Minister of Broadcasting. He was Deputy Prime Minister, right? They appointed a commission to investigate me. The commission did its work and came down and said, we can't find anything wrong with you. The only faults we find with you, the only complaints we can get from your staff is that you don't give them coffee in the morning and you don't allow the transport to take them home at night. That's the only complaint you get out of your staff. So please fix that at your... So the minister now comes to see me and he says, Rene, my colleagues in cabinet want me to fire you. But I'm a fair man and I cannot find any grounds on which to fire you. So I need to ask you, are you willing to work for this new government? So Rene says, well, Minister, I love broadcasting. The only place I can practice what I love is here. So in short, sir, the answer is yes, I will work for your new government. He said, but if I catch you, and he used that word there, the new government, I said, Minister, it won't happen either.
Chief, and I really need to say right here, I think you're the only Belizean that has been able to move yourself in those waters, and that's amazing. That's really a gift.
It might even be in the Caribbean, I'm not sure. But anyway, so he says, so he says, but if I catch you like double crossing, I said, Minister, it won't happen either. What do you mean? All I have, sir, is my integrity. And I will not compromise my integrity by working for you and betraying you at the same time. That won't happen. So I worked the full 5 years with the UDP, right, government, right? Minister Thompson and I became such good friends that I would go to his home. He would pass in the evening and say, what you doing? Come from and take me up. We'll go ride together and talk and what have you, right? But my PUP friends didn't like the idea, that they couldn't get things out of me, right? So, or get favors from you or anything like that. Because at that time you have to keep the PUP off the airwaves, they have to keep their position off the airwaves, and that's not my policy.
And you have to be loyal to what you signed up for.
Implement the policy, right? And I explained to them, I'm implementing policy, right? The house have to change that to me, or the head. I'm not the one to change that. So I could advise, right? So now 1989 elections come, and the PUP win. So I pack up my box again. I said, well, they're definitely in a family, because at this time the PUP is shouting at me, you gone, you're the history. Out with you. So I have my box packed up, but I'm a professional, I won't walk out. So Said Musa becomes Minister of Education and Broadcasting. And so he meets me at a basketball game, and he says, Rene, can I talk to you? I said, of course, Minister. Remember now, Said knows me well because we were together in Independence, and so that right today they know me, right? So he said, can I talk to you? I said, yeah. He said, I don't got time to get to you yet. I said, well, fine, Minister, but, right? He told me two things he wanted done. I said, Minister, you set the policy, right? It's a department, you set the policy, and we'll get it done in time for you, right? Then he said, in our manifesto, we said we're going to free up the radio station. He said, you know anything about that? I said, that's not a problem either, Minister. How you mean? Minister, I have written the document that frees up the radio station as a recommendation to the government, right? The document, I did it 3 years ago, presented to the UDP administration. They said they would have done it if they had won these elections, but they did not win. You won. So he looks at me and says, you mean that work has been? I said, yes, sir, I did the groundwork 3 years ago. Can I get a copy of the document? Of course, sir. And I took the document I wrote for the UDP 3 years before, and I gave it to I'm working for the government, and I'm working with people at Belize, so it doesn't matter me. So I gave it then to Mr. Musa. And then he looks at it. I met him sometime later, and I said, Minister, have you gone over that document that I gave you? He says, yes, I think it's a good beginning. right? To cut the story short now, the BCB was created out of that document, right? As a result
Broadcasting Corporation of Belize.
Broadcasting Corporation of Belize came out of that document, out of that work. I have to say and give kudos, and I could never talk about the creation of Broadcasting Corporation of Belize without giving kudos to the Right Honorable Said Musa. Because the Right Honorable Said Musa championed almost single-handedly the creation of the Broadcasting Corporation of Belize. He took that document I wrote and liberalized it even more than I had, right? You know, he even gave the deputy chairmanship to the opposition party, which was unheard of in the Caribbean at the time. Visionary. Right? He was a real visionary. So I need to give credit where credit is due. So the Right Honorable Said Musa really made it what it is. Now, I know my days as chief broadcasting officer, I'm still not sure if I come to end or not. I'm working with the Attorney General office and everything, but I know when it happened. Because they would ask me the technical sides of the law, that they're drafting the law and they're asking me the technical implications. And I'm still waiting for be fired. My back still pack, right? So one day I'm in my office and George Price, Prime Minister George Price, I was once again back in office, and he calls me and said, Rene, I want to see you immediately. I said, well, maybe the Prime Minister wants to send me home himself, you know? So I go and I say, yes, Prime Minister. He says, oh, Rene, you know how George Price talk. Oh, Rene, you know we're creating this broadcasting corporation, no? I say, yes, Prime Minister. He said, I need to ask you, are you willing to work with us in the creation of this broadcasting corporation? I said, Prime Minister, if I know I believe in the freedom of the airwaves, so I've not written the thing in the first place. Right? So, of course, the answer is yes, I will work with you in the creation of this broadcasting corporation. Oh, okay, welcome back, Rene, welcome back. And he pushes me through his door. Right? And so I unpacked my box and stayed. And we formed the BCB.
The same man that made you the temporary Spanish announcer. Then made you the chairman, well, the CEO of Broadcasting Corporation.
Wow. So I stayed, well, we formed the Broadcasting Corporation of Belize, and I became its first CEO.
And how old were you at this time?
I was in my late 30s.
So maybe like 20 years later. Everything happened like 20 years later.
Well, you want me to put the timeline? I became Chief Broadcasting Officer in 1983. Okay. Right? General Manager of the Broadcasting Corporation of Belize in 1990, right? And then I left the Broadcasting Corporation of Belize a little over 2 years after it was created.
Right, so let's talk about that. What prompted you to leave? I mean, you were doing a fantastic job. I was there. Yeah, now, this is where I come in.
That's where you come in.
I came in, right, at 1991. I was... waiting, I was holding over at Reporter Press, and Leo called me, Leo Bradley. He was already the manager of the TV unit. Yes, I said, Pauline, we need a producer, please come on board. And that's where I come in now, sometime around October 1991.
The TV unit started in 1987. Wow. Because the Japanese government had just given the government of Belize the first set of camera and TV equipment to the Ministry of Education. Right? I using, along with Deputy Prime Minister Thompson, arranged for us to start our first TV news to give to the cable operators who are coming up around the place, to distribute to the cable operators, our first local TV news. So I started TV news in Belize.
Yes, I was actually there when that happened.
Yeah, I started TV news in 1987. And so we had the TV news running right through until the creation of the Broadcasting Corporation of Belize. Channel 5 was not created until years after, right? So from 1987 until 1990, right, the only news in Belize TV news in Belize was the news we produced. The news were first.
BCB TV 3.
Then we created BCB TV 3, right? When BCB was born, we created BCB TV 3, and so we had that only TV newscast. Then Stuart Crone created Channel 5, and then they started their newscast. And 5, it was BCB News and Channel 5 News. Channel 5 had its own newscast. BCB had its own newscast distributed to all the other stations, right? For free to all the cable systems and what have you.
I think at this point now you're starting to feel if I know you, because I know you and her are a lot alike, you get tired, you feel unchallenged. So now you want to move on to your own thing.
Remember, the dream has always been to have my own radio station.
Right, so it's
As a matter of fact, in the 80s, when I had recommended the first freedom of the airwaves, in the 80s, when the UDP was in between 85 and 89, and I had written a paper on my first private radio station. It was to be named Action Radio 104 FM.
Okay.
Right? I already had the name for it, Action Radio. Right? And obviously, I continued as working for the government, so that never did pan out. Right? And so on. But going back now to where we are with me becoming general manager of the BCB, I think the government was not used to hearing opposition viewpoints prominently displayed. Because for the first time you can hear leader of the opposition, Right Honorable Manala Esquivel today visited so and so and so and so and so and so. And he said this and you play the insert with his voice. He criticized the government and you play that, And so obviously it was like ahead of its time.
Right, you were given an objective news reporting.
Obviously I was accused of being politically biased.
Somewhere in 1993, you decided to leave BCB.
Well, after a lot of confusion with the chairman, the changed chairman and me, they put a politically oriented chairman, and the politics started to step in. And then my contract was coming to an end because now I'm a contract as general manager of the BCB, a 2-year contract, right, as general manager of the BCB. So I applied to the chairman to renew my contract. I said, my contract is coming to an end. I'm applying to renew my contract. I'm interested in renewing my contract. His answer was, the board has decided to advertise the post of general manager in view of government's decision to further privatize the corporation. My immediate reaction was, if you're privatizing the corporation, then the new owners should be the one that decide who will be the general manager, not the person who's doing it. Anyway, I said, so you're gently telling me that you think there's somebody better than me to manage a corporation. So I went to see him, and I said, and he pretty much repeated that they will advertise the post, and so on. So I said, well, you are saying, he said, but there's nothing to stop you from reapplying. You could reapply. I said, when I wrote you, my letter was our application. You have turned it down and advertising the post. So you are saying, in fact, that you think that there's somebody better than me out there to run your corporation. So if you think you'll find somebody better than me to run the corporation, go ahead. I am moving. I don't know. But what will you do? Don't worry about what I will do. Right? I'm moving. I'm gone. He says, is that irrevocable? I say, it is irrevocable. I'm moving. Right? I will not go through the humiliation you want to put me through. Right? So I'm leaving. And so I left at the end of my contract. Right? My staff, at the time, you being one of them, was so devastated, because I can remember the whole staff was in an uproar. 55 out of 63 members of staff signed a letter to the minister and to the board of directors of the BCB asking that I remain, that they keep me.
Terry Gordon and I went to see the minister too.
Yeah, you see? And so the whole staff was behind me.
With that pledge.
The pledge, yeah, But I remember calling a meeting with the staff and saying, thank you for the confidence, thank you for everything, but I have decided to move on, And then remember Minister Musa calling me and saying, Rene, this letter that I have here is so powerful. He said, I could reverse everything based on this letter from your staff. He said, what do you want me to do? I said, Minister, all I want is my window of opportunity. I want my opportunity to create my own radio station. Right? And he said, well, I can't say you're not qualified. And that's how love started. The hurt was tremendous. I cried many times, right? but I knew that where I wanted to go.
But you chose love. You chose light because you have always had that light in you, and your story says that.
Well, that is why the station is named Love, because there's either love or hate. Right? And hate is not a way to go. Right? So the way to go is to forgive and to love. And here the forgiveness and reconciliation comes in again. So forgive and love. Right? So that's what I did. I forgave those who hurt me. Right? Chose love as the name for the organization, and decided it will emanate nothing but love. And so it had to be about love. It has to be about love. It has to be about love. The music has to say love. Everything has to say love. God is love, and so on.
Chief, love never fails. And right now...
I agree. Love never fails. Right. It's all about love.
Yes, we'll break here. And then when we return, we will hear the story of love.
That's right, and that's why we say, Belize and beyond. Thanks for choosing love.
Come sister, come brother, come together. All of we that one, the Skizo and the Maya, the Kyoto. All of we that one. That for you, that for me, it's that for we. It's that for you, that for me, it's that for we. Pase amor, mis hermanos. Amor y paz son mis paisanos. I wanted to jump and shout. Celebration, not a